The void dragon fell from the sky like a dying star. Ash had ruled the outer reaches for 3 centuries, but tonight, he was just another wounded animal trying to find a place to die. His scales, once black as the emptiness between galaxies, were cracked and bleeding. 3 of his 6 wings hung useless, torn apart in a territorial fight he should have walked away from. But dragons don't walk away. That's what kills most of them. His massive body crashed through the atmosphere of a forgotten planet, burning and twisting, until he slammed into the ruins of what used to be a human settlement. The impact crater glowed red-hot for hours. When Ash finally dragged himself to his feet, everything hurt. He limped through the abandoned colony, searching for water, for shelter, for anything. The buildings were ancient, covered in rust and creeping vines. This place had been dead for decades, maybe longer. Perfect. He could die here in peace, far from scavengers and young dragons looking to prove themselves. That's when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong in a dead city. Crying. Ash followed the noise to a reinforced bunker half buried in rubble. Inside, emergency lights still blinked weakly, powered by some fusion cell that refused to quit. And there, in a cryopod covered in warning labels and frost, was a human baby. The dragon stared at the tiny creature. She couldn't have been more than a few months old, red-faced and screaming, her little fists waving at nothing. The pod systems were failing. Maybe another week, maybe less, and she'd be dead. Ash should have left. Should have let nature take its course. Dragons didn't raise other species young. It went against every instinct, every law of survival. But something about those screaming lungs, that stubborn refusal to go quietly, reminded him of something. Maybe himself. Maybe every creature that ever looked at the universe and said not today. He opened the pod with one massive claw. The baby stopped crying and stared at him with wide eyes. She reached up and grabbed his talon with both hands, holding on with surprising strength. "Stupid child," Ash muttered in the old dragon tongue. "Don't you know I'm a predator?" She just gurgled and smiled. That's how it started. The last void dragon became a father. Ash called her Riley, after a word in the human language files he found in the colony's database. It meant something about bravery and courage, which seemed fitting for a species that had crawled out of caves and touched the stars in just a few thousand years. The first few years were chaos. Dragons don't exactly come with parenting manuals, and Ash had to figure out what human babies even ate. He couldn't exactly hunt for her like he would a dragon hatchling. Humans were ridiculously fragile and needed all sorts of specific things just to not die. But Ash was old and smart. He powered up the colony's computers, read every file about human child rearing he could find, and did his best. He heated formula with controlled bursts of his fire breath. He kept her warm on cold nights by curling his massive body around her. He taught himself to be gentle, which for a creature that could crush steel was harder than any battle he'd ever fought. As Riley grew, something amazing happened. She didn't fear him. While most creatures ran from dragons, she climbed on his scales like they were playground equipment. She laughed when he flew, holding onto his neck spikes with tiny hands. She fell asleep against his chest, listening to the 3 hearts beating inside. By the time Riley turned 12, she was as wild as the planet itself. Ash had taught her everything he knew. How to track prey by reading disturbed air currents. How to navigate by stars that humans couldn't even see. How to fight dirty, because honor meant nothing when you were trying to survive. How to speak the dragon tongue, that ancient language that bent reality when spoken correctly. Riley thought she was a dragon. Just a strange-looking one without scales or wings. Ash never corrected her. Why would he? She was his daughter in every way that mattered. They lived in the ruins, just the 2 of them against the universe. Ash's wounds slowly healed over the years, though he'd never fly as fast as before. Riley built a home from salvaged colony materials, decorating it with things she found exploring the dead city. They hunted together, fought together, survived together. It was peaceful. For 12 years, it was peaceful. Then the ships came. Ash smelled them before the senses detected anything. He'd lived long enough to recognize the signature of hunter vessels, their engines modified for pursuit, their hulls carrying weapons designed for one purpose, killing things bigger than themselves. He looked at Riley, who was sharpening a blade from scrap metal, humming some tune she'd made up. "Riley," he said quietly. "Pack everything. We need to leave. Now." She looked up at the tone in his voice, the one he only used when teaching her about serious danger. "What's wrong?" Ash spread his wings and stared at the sky where distant lights were growing brighter. "They found me." The ships landed like metal vultures circling a corpse. Riley counted 7 of them, each one bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. They touched down in a half-circle formation, cutting off escape routes with military precision. These weren't explorers or traders. These were hunters, and they'd come prepared. Ash grabbed Riley by the shoulder, his claws surprisingly gentle despite their size. The canyon system. 3 miles east. Stay low, stay quiet, and don't look back. What about you? I'll buy us time. Now move. They ran. Ash's massive form crashed through the forest like a landslide, while Riley moved like water between the trees, exactly how he'd taught her. Behind them, she heard the hunters deploying. Shouts in a language she didn't recognize. The whine of charging weapons. The mechanical buzz of drones launching into the air. The canyon system was a maze of red rock that Ash had shown her years ago. Perfect for hiding, terrible for flying, which meant the hunters would have to come on foot. They made it 2 miles before the drones caught up. Ash moved faster than Riley had ever seen. His tail whipped up, and 3 drones exploded in midair. Another burst of his void breath, that black fire that made reality scream, and 5 more simply ceased to exist. But more kept coming. For every drone he destroyed, 2 more appeared. Then the real hunters arrived. They dropped from hovering ships, 12 of them in heavy combat armor. The leader was different from the others, taller, with more scars and better equipment. His armor had trophies welded to it. Bones and teeth from creatures Riley couldn't identify. He pointed at Ash and said something into his comm unit. The others fanned out with practiced ease. Stay hidden, Ash growled, pushing Riley into a crevice in the rocks. No matter what happens, stay hidden. No, I can help, I can. You're 12 years old and weigh 90 pounds. Against this, you're just another way to hurt me. Stay hidden. The lead hunter stepped forward. I am Commander Cole of the Vrexian Hunting Cartel. Ash, last of the Void Dragons, you're worth more credits dead than most planets. This can be quick, or it can be painful. Your choice. Ash's laugh was like thunder. I've been dying since before your species learned to use fire. Come try to speed it up. What happened next changed everything Riley thought she knew about fighting. Ash wasn't just dangerous. He was a living weapon honed by 3 centuries of survival. He moved like liquid shadow, his massive body impossibly fast. When he roared, the sound wave physically knocked hunters off their feet. His tail became a whip that broke armor like glass. His claws tore through their energy shields like they were paper. But the hunters had done their homework. They fired nets made from some kind of energy mesh that stuck to Ash's scales and burned. They launched harpoons that exploded on impact, each one tearing through scales that should have been impenetrable. They used tactics, rotating positions, never giving him a clean target. Riley watched her father fight like a god, and she watched him bleed. One hunter got close enough to plant a device on Ash's back leg. It beeped 3 times, then pulsed with blue light. Suddenly, Ash's movements became slower, heavier. The gravity around him shifted wrong. Void anchors, Cole said calmly, dodging a claw swipe. Nullifies your gravitational manipulation. Expensive, but worth it for the last Void Dragon. Ash roared in frustration and caught one hunter in his jaws, shaking him like a toy before tossing the body aside. But 3 more devices attached to his other legs. His wings. His tail. Each one made him slower, more vulnerable. That's when Riley saw it. The opening Cole was waiting for. The hunter commander had positioned himself perfectly, waiting for Ash to turn, to expose his chest for just a second. No. Riley screamed. Everything froze for a heartbeat. Ash's head snapped toward her hiding spot. Cole's weapon aimed. The trigger pulled. Time moved like honey. Riley saw the kinetic harpoon launch, saw it spiral through the air with mathematical precision, saw it punch through scales that had survived black holes and wars and the deaths of stars. Ash stumbled. His 3 hearts, beating in perfect rhythm for over 300 years, skipped. Riley, he said, and his voice in her mind was so gentle. You need to know something before this ends. Riley was crying, trying to climb out of her hiding spot, but Ash's telepathic push kept her pinned. She screamed at him to stop, to fight, to not give up. You're not a dragon, little one. You're human. The word hit her like cold water. What? Your species, they're legends. The ones who never break. The unkillables. I found you in the ruins and I raised you and I loved you, but you need to know what you are. Because they're going to come for you next, and when they do. His voice was fading. More harpoons struck home. His massive legs buckled. When they do, Show them what 300 years of my training mixed with human stubbornness looks like. Show them why the galaxy fears your kind. Survive, Riley. That's what humans do. They survive everything. Ash fell. The impact shook the ground. His breathing became labored, wet, wrong. Commander Cole wiped blood from his face and smiled. Secure the body. And someone grab that kid. Might be worth something as a curiosity. 2 hunters started toward Riley's hiding spot. They had no idea what they just created. Ash was dying, and Riley couldn't do anything but watch. She'd seen him hunt creatures twice his size. She'd watched him bend gravity with a thought, making rocks float or crushing metal into dust. She'd seen him survive wounds that would kill anything else. But now, pinned to the ground by 7 kinetic harpoons and surrounded by void anchors, the last dragon was bleeding out onto Red Canyon stone. Commander Cole walked around Ash's body like a buyer inspecting merchandise. He touched the scales, nodding in approval at their quality. He examined the wings, calculating their value. To him, Ash wasn't a person. He was a trophy. A paycheck. The biggest score of Cole's career. Get the molecular cutters, Cole ordered his team. We need to preserve as much tissue as possible. Dragon DNA sells for more than most planets are worth. One of the hunters approached with a device that hummed with dangerous energy. He pressed it against Ash's side, and the smell of burning flesh filled the air. Ash groaned, a sound so deep and broken that Riley felt it in her bones. Stop, she whispered from her hiding spot. Then louder, stop it. But they couldn't hear her. Or they didn't care. Ash's massive eye found her through the rocks. Even dying, even in agony, he was still trying to protect her. His telepathic voice touched her mind one last time, and it was warm, like all those nights he'd curled around her to keep her safe from the cold. Listen carefully, daughter. Humans are not like other species. They don't have scales or claws or natural weapons. They're not the strongest or the fastest. But they have something that terrifies the galaxy. Riley pressed herself against the rocks, tears streaming down her face. I don't understand. What am I supposed to do? You adapt. You survive. You never, ever quit. A human with a rock defeated predators with teeth and claws. Humans with nothing but determination walked out of caves and conquered their entire planet. They looked at the stars and built ships from metal and mathematics. The universe tried to kill your species 1,000 times, and every single time, humans refused to die. More hunters gathered around Ash's body. They were laughing now, taking pictures, celebrating their victory. One of them kicked Ash's snout like he was nothing more than a dead animal on the side of a road. Something changed in Riley's chest. Something cold and sharp and absolutely furious. I raised you as a dragon, Ash continued, his mental voice growing fainter. I taught you how to hunt, how to fight, how to track and kill and survive. But you have something I never had. You have human endurance. Human pattern recognition. Human spite. Mix that with everything I taught you, and you become something the galaxy hasn't seen in a very long time. What's that? A nightmare. Ash's 3 hearts stopped beating one by one. First the primary. Then, 30 seconds later, the secondary. Finally, the tertiary heart gave out with one last weak pulse. The last void dragon was dead. Commander Cole pulled out a scanning device and confirmed it. We're clear. Start harvesting. I want this done in 3 hours. Teams 2 and 3, grab the girl and secure the perimeter. 2 hunters broke off from the main group and headed toward Riley's hiding spot. They weren't being careful. Why would they be? She was just a kid. A scared, traumatized child who'd watched her dragon parent die. They probably expected tears and begging. Riley watched them approach. She looked at their armor, their weapons, their confident swagger. She studied how they moved, where they looked, what they prioritized. Her mind, trained by 3 centuries of dragon knowledge and 12 years of survival training, started calculating. Distance to target, 40 feet. Visibility, low in the canyon shadows. Their armor, heavy, slowing them down. Weapons, holstered, they didn't see her as a threat. Terrain advantage, all hers. She reached down and picked up a sharp rock. Just a rock. The first tool humans ever used. The hunters were 20 feet away now. Riley looked at Ash's body one more time. She saw the scars from 100 battles. She remembered him teaching her to track by smell. To use every advantage. To turn weaknesses into weapons. To never fight fair because fairness was for creatures who could afford to lose. I love you, Dad, she whispered. Then she moved. The first hunter died before he realized she'd left her hiding spot. Riley came from an angle he wasn't watching, low and fast, just like Ash taught her when hunting the canyon lizards. The rock in her hand found the weak point where his helmet connected to his chest plate. Ash had taught her about anatomy, about where every species kept their vital organs. She struck once. Twice. 3 times before he could even raise his weapon. The second hunter spun around, finally understanding the danger. He saw his partner falling, saw this 12-year-old girl covered in dust and dragon blood, and his hand went for his weapon. But Riley was already moving. Not away. Toward him. She'd learned from the best predator in the galaxy. And now, covered in her father's blood, with nothing left to lose and a lifetime of hunting knowledge in her head, Riley stopped being prey. She became something else entirely. Something human. The second hunter got his weapon up, but Riley was already inside his reach. Ash had taught her that distance was everything in a fight. Stay too far, and they shoot you. Get too close, and big weapons become useless. She grabbed his arm and twisted, using his own momentum against him. The weapon fired wild, hitting rocks instead of flesh. Before he could adjust, Riley kicked the back of his knee exactly where the armor joint was weakest. He went down hard. She didn't stay to finish him. That was another lesson from Ash: never stay in one place. Keep moving. Be unpredictable. Make them afraid. Riley disappeared into the canyon shadows like smoke. Behind her, she heard the hunter screaming into his comm unit. Contact. The girl, she's armed, she's dangerous, we need backup. Good. Let them be scared. Let them know they made a mistake. The next 6 hours became a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. Riley didn't have their armor or weapons or technology. But she had the home advantage, 12 years of training from an apex predator, and something the hunters had never encountered before: human stubbornness mixed with pure grief-fueled rage. She hit them at their camp first, just after dark. The hunters had set up portable lights, thinking illumination meant safety. Riley stayed in the darkness beyond the light, threw rocks to create sounds from different directions, made them paranoid and jumpy. When one hunter went to investigate, she disabled him quietly with a piece of sharpened metal. Not killed. Disabled. She wanted the others to find him and waste time on medical care. Ash had taught her, injured prey slows down the whole herd. She stole supplies during the confusion. Medical kits. Rations. A knife. Small things they wouldn't immediately miss. Then she vanished again before they could organize a search. Commander Cole gathered his remaining team. 8 hunters left out of 12. She's just a kid, he snarled. A feral human with a rock. We're trained professionals with military-grade equipment. Find her. Now. They spread out in pairs, scanning with thermal imaging and motion sensors. But Riley had learned about sensors from the colony computers. She knew their limitations. She covered herself in mud to mask her heat signature. She moved during their scanning cycles, freezing when the sensors swept past. One pair of hunters found her trail and followed it into a narrow canyon passage. Riley had spent an hour setting the trap. Rocks balanced on ledges. Trip lines made from salvaged wire. When they entered, she pulled one wire, and 50 pounds of stone rained down. Not enough to kill them through armor, but enough to damage their equipment and break bones. While they were pinned and calling for help, Riley took their weapons. She didn't know how to use alien guns, but she knew how to break them. She smashed the energy packs and scattered the pieces. More lessons from Ash: deny your enemy their advantages. The third night, Riley poisoned their water supply. Not fatally, just enough to make them sick. She'd found toxic plants in the canyon that she'd learned to avoid years ago. While the hunters were vomiting and weak, she sabotaged their communication array. Cut the wires in places that wouldn't be immediately obvious. Made them think it was a malfunction instead of sabotage. Now they couldn't call for orbital support. They were alone. Isolated. Just like she was. Fair. Commander Cole realized his mistake on the 4th day. He'd lost 2 more hunters during the night, found unconscious with head wounds. He gathered the remaining 4 around Ash's body, using the dragon's corpse as a defensive position. She should be exhausted, one hunter said, his voice shaking. We've barely slept, but she's human. She should need rest more than us. Cole checked his datapad, reading the intelligence files about humans. His face went pale. No, humans are persistence hunters. On their home world, they used to chase prey for days without stopping. They just keep following until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. That's a myth. Is it? Look around. She's been hitting us for 4 days straight. Have any of you actually seen her rest? The truth was, Riley hadn't slept more than 20 minutes at a time. She was running on adrenaline and fury and something deeper. Something Ash had recognized in her 12 years ago when she was just a screaming baby refusing to die quietly in a cryopod. That human quality that looks at impossible odds and says, "Try me." She was exhausted. Her hands shook. Her body ached. But she could see them starting to break. Saw the fear in their movements, the paranoia in how they scanned every shadow. They were hunters used to stalking big, straightforward prey. They didn't know how to fight something that thought, that learned, that adapted with every encounter. On the fifth night, Riley sat in the darkness 50 yards from their camp and watched them. Only 4 left now, plus Commander Cole. They tried to launch their ships twice. Both times, she damaged the engines with Ash's acidic blood. That black substance ate through metal like water through paper. One hunter was crying. Another kept arguing they should just walk to the nearest settlement, abandon everything. Cole held them together through sheer force of will, but even he looked haunted. Riley picked up a rock. Just a simple rock, like the one she'd used to start all this. She thought about Ash, about everything he'd taught her, about what he'd said with his last breath. Humans survived. That's what they did. They survived ice ages and predators and diseases and wars. They survived when every logical analysis said they should die. They survived out of pure spite sometimes, just to prove the universe wrong. She stood up and walked toward their camp. Not sneaking this time. Walking openly. She wanted them to see her coming. It was time to finish this. Riley walked into their camp like a ghost stepping out of a nightmare. The portable lights caught her figure, and the 4 remaining hunters jumped to their feet, weapons raised. She looked like something from a horror story. Covered in dirt and blood, both hers and not. Cuts and bruises across every visible inch of skin. But her eyes were the worst part. Cold. Focused. Completely empty of fear. "Hold fire," Commander Cole ordered. He stepped forward, his weapon pointed at her chest. "It's over, girl. You've had your revenge. 4 of my people dead, 5 more wounded badly enough they'll never hunt again. You've made your point." Riley didn't respond. She just kept walking forward, slow and steady. "I said stop." Cole's finger tightened on the trigger. She stopped 5 feet away. Close enough that missing would be impossible. "You killed my father." "That thing wasn't your father. It was a dragon. A animal. Worth more dead than alive. He found me in the ruins when I was a baby. He could have eaten me or left me to die. Instead, he raised me. Fed me. Taught me. Loved me. That makes him my father. And you killed him for money." Cole laughed, but it sounded forced. "You think you're special? You think this changes anything? You're one human. One kid. The galaxy is full of hunters, full of people like me. Killing me won't bring your dragon back." "I know," Riley said quietly. "But it'll make me feel better." She moved. Even expecting it, even with their fingers on triggers, the hunters were too slow. Riley had spent 5 days learning their patterns, their reaction times, their weaknesses. She knew exactly how long it took them to aim, to fire, to adjust. She went for Cole first, because he was the leader and the best fighter. Her hand struck his wrist, and the weapon clattered away. She swept his legs, and he went down hard. Before his backup could react, she'd grabbed his fallen weapon. Now she was armed. Now it was different. The other hunters froze. Riley pointed the weapon at them, then slowly lowered it. "Run. Take your wounded and go. Leave one ship functioning, take everything else, and never come back to this planet." One hunter, younger than the others, didn't hesitate. He started backing toward the ships immediately. "Stand your ground." Cole shouted from the ground. "She's bluffing. She doesn't even know how to use that weapon." Riley adjusted her grip, flipped a switch she'd watched them use a dozen times, and fired a single shot into the ground next to Cole's head. The rock exploded into molten glass. "I've been watching you for 5 days," she said. "I know exactly how these work. I know how your armor seals. I know where your ships keep their fuel cells. I know which one of you has a family waiting back home because he talks about them in his sleep." She looked at the young hunter who'd been backing away. "You. The one with the daughter named Beth. Take the others and leave. This is your only chance." He didn't need to be told twice. Within 10 minutes, 3 ships were loaded with wounded hunters and lifting off. Riley watched them go, keeping the weapon trained on Cole the entire time. When they were gone, it was just the 2 of them. The hunter and the human. Alone with Ash's body and the ruins of a forgotten world. Cole pushed himself to his feet slowly. So what now? You going to kill me? Become just like us? No, Riley said. I'm going to make you do something worse. You're going to help me bury him. Properly. According to Void Dragon tradition. You're insane. Maybe. But you're going to help me anyway. Because if you don't, I'll break both your legs and leave you here to think about it. It took them 3 days to prepare Ash's body according to the rituals Riley had learned. Cole complained constantly, but he worked. He had no choice. When it was done, they built a cairn of stones over the dragon's body, marking the place where the last Void Dragon fell. Riley accessed Cole's ship computer and uploaded everything. Video footage of the illegal hunt. Evidence of the Vrexian cartel's violations of protected species laws. Files documenting dozens of extinct creatures killed for profit. She broadcasted it all across every communication channel she could find. Within hours, the galactic network exploded. The Vrexian cartel's assets were frozen. Bounties were placed on Cole and his surviving crew. Governments that had been paid to look the other way suddenly found themselves investigated. But Riley wasn't done. She recorded one final message and sent it out to every hunting organization, every cartel, every group that made their money killing rare creatures. My name is Riley Ash, she said to the camera. I'm human. 12 years old. I was raised by the last Void Dragon, and you killed him. It took all of you, with all your technology and weapons and experience, to kill one injured dragon. And then I, with nothing but rocks and scrap metal, nearly wiped out your entire team. She paused, letting that sink in. Humans don't have scales or claws. We're not the strongest or the fastest. But we learn. We adapt. And we never, ever forget. So here's my message. Leave protected species alone. Leave families alone. Because if you don't, you might find yourself hunted by something worse than any dragon. You might find yourself hunted by a human who has nothing left to lose. She ended the transmission. Commander Cole sat in the corner of his own ship, watching her. What are you going to do with me? Riley looked at him for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the ship's controls. I'm taking your ship. You're going to take an emergency pod and hope someone picks you up before your supplies run out. If they do, you'll face trial. If they don't. She shrugged. The universe tends to balance itself out. She launched his escape pod and watched it drift into space. Then she sat in the pilot's chair of her new ship and looked at the controls. She'd watched Cole use them for days. She'd memoized every button, every sequence. Riley Ash, daughter of the last dragon, fired up the engines. The ship lifted off, leaving the canyon ruins behind. Leaving her father's grave behind. But taking his lessons, his love, and his legacy with her into the stars. Across the galaxy, hunting organizations updated their databases. A new entry appeared, marked in red. Species, human. Threat level, apex. Additional notes, do not engage. Do not threaten families. Capable of extreme adaptation and persistence. Refer to Riley Ash incident for details. Consider all humans potentially dangerous regardless of age or apparent capability. The last dragon was gone. But his roar echoed through the galaxy, carried in the voice of one stubborn human girl who refused to let his death mean nothing. And somewhere in deep space, Riley smiled and set her course for home. For Earth. The planet of creatures who looked at impossible odds and never learned to quit. She had a lot to tell them about what she'd learned in the ruins. About what humans could become when they were raised by dragons. About what the galaxy should fear when it made the mistake of hunting the wrong family. The hunt was over. But Riley's story was just beginning.